Hello, I'm Jason from StrataGames. Today we're playing some more Pauper. I hope you had a white Christmas, because we certainly did. I've been playing just a ton of white weenies. This has become the deck that I just play for fun whenever I'm bored. And I've been doing really well with the deck. I think it's quite strong right now. So previously on the channel, I've played this deck a couple times using Martyr's Soul, which is a bit of my own innovation. And I think that version of the deck is absolutely sweet, but I'm trying something a little different here. Currently, the meta seems to be absolutely flooded with Kuldotha Burn and Krark Clan Shaman decks, mostly those being Grixis Affinity and Jund Wildfire. Because of that, Martyr's Soul is not as good. It's a random creature that doesn't get you value on the ground, so it dies to Krark Clan Shaman and it dies to Lightning Bolt pretty easily. So I decided to try a couple different cards that I've been seeing other people play in order to hedge against those decks. I'm still not playing Militia Bugler because F that guy. I think that card is trash. You can find me in the comments if you want to. So I'm trying out 2 Suture Priest. This is just another Soul Sister that gains us life, but it also pings our opponent for every creature that they play. It's really good against Writhing Chrysalis, which is all over the format. Pings them for 3 off of that. So if we're already in a bit of a race or an aggro situation, which we usually will be, we can ping them for a bunch there. It's not bad against mono red. Obviously, it's just another Soul Sister, but also they could lose 6 or 7 life off of it easily, and then that can help boost us ahead in the race. And also, I've been playing against a lot of Elves recently, and this card is very good against them as well. So I wanted to try it. I'm a little skeptical because it is 2 mana for a 1/1, so not a very good attacker, and it doesn't give us any inherent value by itself, and certainly no card advantage or anything like that, but I think I like the look of it enough to give it a try. The other main thing is Judge's Familiar I've started to see. I think this is a hedge against Krark Clan Shaman, as it's another flyer, so it doesn't die to that, but it's also just another nice way to counter a Breath Weapon or an Arms of Hadar or any other spell that seems to be troubling you at the time, so I think it's a pretty sweet one to try. As for the rest of the deck, pretty stock. We have so many 1-drops here. We have 4 Lunarch Veterans to gain life, and then 8 Inspectors Novice and Thraben, of course. Core Skyfisher to pick up our usually Inspectors or Idyllic Granges to get a little bit of extra value. Rafine's Informant is a nice 3/2 that can pitch Prismatic Strands, Battle Screech, or a Lunarch Veteran for some extra card advantage. Thraben Charm is just the best white removal spell that there is. Hits creatures, hits enchantments, and hits graveyards, which is really good. Prismatic Strand keeps our team alive. Battle Screech makes 4 1/1 flyers, which is especially important against the Krark Clan Shaman decks. We have a couple Eagles of the North, which usually will be cycled into a land, but if we happen to flood out a little bit, can be a nice pump for our team. And then Guardian's Pledge is usually our win con. Give all our creatures +2/+2, and we obliterate our opponent. Bunch of planes and those Idyllic Ranges as well. And then for the sideboard, we are hedging against the decks that we are most scared of, that being mono red. So even though our main deck's pretty good against mono red with Prismatic Strands and life gain, it's always a deck that you need to side against a little bit because it's just terrifying. So 3 Hallows and 3 Eroshan Clerics to gain some life and keep our creatures alive. 4 Standard Bearers. This is mostly against Broodscale and Elves. They can't target their creature with Sadistic Glee, so they can't combo. And Elves can't target their creatures with Quirion Ranger, with Nyxborn Hydra, or with their Timber Watch Elf. So a lot of good value there. 3 Dust to Dust in case we go up against Affinity, and some Holy Light. That's the deck. I've been loving it. Since I started playing it pretty seriously a couple weeks ago and started posting those videos on the channel, I am 18-2 with different versions of the deck, both the Martyr's Soul and this version, those 2 losses only being to Elves. So I think it's really strong, and with the proper sideboard for Elves, I think it has a really good shot of giving you trophies. Anyway, so that's our sideboard. Let's jump into some games. Round 1 here, we have a bit of a sketchy one. We only have 2 lands with the Eagles, but 2 4-drops with Battle Screeches and no current way to put them in our graveyard. But we do have plays for our 2 mana. We have 3 different plays. Novice Inspector can hopefully draw us to a 3rd land. So I think it's one that we can keep. We also get to try out the Judge's Familiar. So we're going to keep this one and start with a creature, most likely. They play a Llanowar Elves, so probably on Elves is our expectation. And so we're going to start with the Judge's Familiar. It's pretty easy for them to just play a 1/2 here or something like that. I guess the 1/2 would usually be like a Jasper Sentinel, which can block the Judge's Familiar just fine. But if they happen to also try to go for like a Lead the Stampede or a Winding Way with no extra mana, then this is a nice way that we can catch that right away. So they start with a Quirion Ranger. untap it, replay their land. 3 mana and a Timberwatch Elf right away is pretty scary. We're going to need to find an answer for that pretty quickly. We're going to cycle our Eagles, get a Plains, play our Thraben Inspector, and attack for 1 while we can. They are going to, once again, untap their Llanowar Elves, dump their hand, Birchlore, Elvish Mystic, and a Well-Wisher. We also need to find an answer to the Well-Wisher, because that can gain them just tons and tons of life, and eventually we won't be able to keep up with it. But they're almost out of cards is the good part. They attack, and we don't block. They pump it for 7 damage total, so we're at 13 here. And we draw our Plains, which is nice. We're going to play a Suture Priest to gain a little bit of life, and if they happen to play a Lead the Stampede or something like that and cast a bunch more creatures, maybe we can ping them for a good amount here. We'll attack for 1 because we don't really want to chump, but we're definitely in a rough spot. We're going to have to start chumping probably next turn, and that's not going to go too well for us. They're going to tap all of their creatures, including their Well-Wisher, to make mana with the Birchlore Rangers. They're going to bestow a Nyxborn Hydra on the Quirion Ranger right now, and they're able to tap the Timberwatch for +6, untap it, +6 again. It's 16 damage. We double chump with the Inspectors to survive. We draw Guardian's Pledge, though, and we don't have an answer to it. We would have needed to draw a Thraben Charm to get rid of the trample here, but they could still just swing with everything, so we were pretty dead either way. Not a great start by any means. So from the sideboard, we get to bring in those 2 Holy Lights and then the 4 Standard Bearers. Those are going to be the most effective, and the other cards in the sideboard don't do much. We take out 6 1-drops, 3 Inspectors, and 3 Judge's Familiars. This just isn't the game for Judge's Familiar. There are going to be very few cards that we can counter with it. They have some reach, so it usually can't get in with flying unless we go super wide. It doesn't give us any other value, so we're going to take them out, not try them for this game. And then the Inspectors, while always decent, the board will often just get so gummed up that they can't attack, and all they really act as is either a chump blocker or 1 creature to attack with like a Guardian's Pledge late in the game, but we can do better. So I think that it works out better. We're usually going to have a grindy matchup against Elves because we both put out tons and tons of creatures, so I think having fewer 1-drops is okay. We don't really need a fast start. We just need some solid cards that are going to be able to interact with their cards, and then also give us a medium game where we're able to, attack in with that Guardian's Pledge. That said, we do have a hand with 3 1-drops here. Totally fine. We still have plenty in the deck. Rafine's Informant and Standard Bearer. We're going to keep this one. We want a little bit more interaction, but the Standard Bearer is a nice start. So we're just going to throw out the Lunarch Veteran. Gaining a little bit of life can be helpful here for sure. And we can't attack past a Sentinel either way. So we're just going to play a Rafine's Informant. Try to find our 3rd land. We pick up a Core Skyfisher and just ditch an Inspector. They're not going to be that important. It's okay to get rid of them at this point, even if we're not getting any value off of it specifically. Maybe we can attack with this Informant a couple of times and get some value out of that. They play a Llanowar Elves, miss their land drop, and don't play another 1/1 with the Sentinel, so that's a good sign for us. We're going to crack in for 3 here and play. And since we didn't get our land drop, we can play Core Skyfisher, buy back our Plains, and then play the Thraben Inspector. This is a nice way to kind of do a Quirion Dryad type of thing that they do, and still use our land drop and get 3 mana out. They Winding Way into 2 Sentinels and a Generous Ent and just play out 2 of those Sentinels. They pass to us. We're able to attack them for 5, down to 12, so we're getting there. And we draw a Suture Priest, so we can play the Suture Priest. I do want to get a Standard Bearer down here. Currently, it doesn't matter with what they have on board, but if they play like a Quirion Dryad or something like that, Quirion Ranger. But if they do play a Quirion Ranger or something like that, we'll want the Standard Bearer out. But I think having the Suture Priest down is going to be good so that they lose life as they play more creatures here. So I decided to try that. They Winding Way, and they hit a Mesmeric Fiend, as well as a Quirion Ranger and a Nyxborn Hydra. So we get to start draining them as they play out their Ranger here. They untap their Llanowar Elves, and then they tap for a Mesmeric Fiend. They're going to be able to take one of our Standard Bearers, which is a little annoying, but we have the second one, so it's not a big deal. And then they have the second Mesmeric Fiend. So actually they are able to take our second Standard Bearer. I know that Elves sometimes plays the Mesmeric Fiend, and it's a pretty good card, admittedly. I didn't really expect them to have 2 right there, so maybe we should have gotten a Standard Bearer down earlier. We wouldn't have pinged for 3 off that Suture Priest, though, so I don't know if that would have been right, but if we lose to an Nyxborn Hydra here, then that would be pretty devastating for sure. We're going to play a Rafine's Informant and see what we draw off of that. We do gain 2 life for every creature that we play. We get a Plains, so we're just ditching that. Obviously it doesn't grow, but that's okay here. They untap their Sentinel. We're going to attack with a Flyer and the Informant. They go down to 4, just taking it. Don't really have a chump blocker they want to throw in front. So 4 life, we can maybe get there. They play a Spider Silk Armor, which is an interesting one, not a bad one at all, seeing as we do have Holy Light. This is pretty annoying. There's no way we're going to be able to wipe their board with it anymore. We do have Thraben Charms, which can blow up the Spider Silk Armor, but we'd have to find that first and then the Holy Light. So it's just an extra step that we have to go through. Plus, it just makes attacking into them really hard. Now all their 1/1s are 1/2s, and that blocks even a Thraben Inspector pretty nicely. So a little annoying for sure, but they didn't do anything else, so it's not terrible. We get a Prismatic Strands. That's going to be good if we are put on the back foot here. We are a little bit. Their Reachers are now 1/3s, so we can't even crack in with our core Skyfisher. A little annoying. So they cycle a Generous Ent to hit their land drop and play that forest on their turn, untap the Quirion Ranger, and they throw out an Avenging Hunter. So we get to ping them down to 3, which is good. Avenging Hunter looks pretty good here. All of their creatures have reach and pretty big toughness, so it's going to be hard to get in for the initiative for sure. We draw a Thraben Charm. That's not bad. It's a nice way to deal with the Spider Silk Armor if we do find that Holy Light. They buff up their Avenging Hunter, so one big boy right there, 7/7. And they lead the Stampede. Just find an Elvish Mystic and another Mesmeric Fiend. And they're going to tap for 2, play a Priest of Titania. We make them lose a life, though. They're at 2 life, so they can't play many more creatures, right? They're at 2 life, 1 more creature, and then they're done. And so really what they're probably hoping for is to find a Well-Wisher as their last creature, able to play it, tap it, start getting some life, they can play creatures again. We're probably going to save this Thraben Charm for that Well-Wisher, though, because it's the only way they really get out of this. So we crack our clue and go to our turn. We get a Lunarch Veteran. So we're going to play our core Skyfisher, pick up our planes, and replay it. We want to hold up this Thraben Charm for if there's a good opportunity to hit that, kill their Well-Wisher or something like that. And just if we need to blow up a Spider Silk Armor or just a trample creature or whatever. They're going to go to the trap, hit us for 5, but we're at 28, so really not too big of a deal here. And they tap for a bunch of mana with this Priest of Titania, untapping it with the Quirion Ranger, and they cast a Nyxborn Hydra on their Sentinel. And I realize often Thraben Charm is best to blow up the Nyxborn Hydra because it's an enchantment and you can just get rid of it. However, it's going to enter as an enchantment, and then when the creature that it's enchanting dies, it's going to just be on the battlefield. If I blow up their creature in response, Nyxborn Hydra enters the battlefield as a creature. That means they're going to get pinged off the Suture Priest for 1 damage. And they have the Undercity, which means in 2 more turns, they're going to go to the Throne of the Dead 3, reveal the top 10 cards of their library, put a creature from among them onto the battlefield with some buffs. That is not a May. You have to reveal the top 10. You have to choose a creature from among them. You have to put it onto the battlefield. So if I blow up their Sentinel here, they take a damage, and then they can't play creatures, and then in 2 turns, they should be dead, and we have a Prismatic Strands to survive until then. So that's exactly what we do. Blow up the Sentinel, make their Hydra enter the battlefield, they take a damage, down to 1, and now they just really don't have much going for them. If I were them, they probably don't realize how the Undercity works, like that you have to do it and everything like that. But that's probably the opportunity that they need to start swinging with, like an Avenging Hunter. Obviously, they also can't let us deal a single point of damage to them, so I understand that it's risky. But all their creatures have reach. They probably should have started swinging with the Hunter here. But now we just have to survive, so no reason to play anything out. We just want to hold up this Prismatic Strands in case they have another Hydra. We're not able to blow up the creature. They go for a big one, and then, we don't want to take 25 damage off of another Hydra. They have another Spider Silk Armor, but that's not going to be too problematic for us right now. And they do tap Priest of Titania twice with the Quirion Ranger, cast a Hydra on this Sentinel. They know that if we have another Thraben Charm, they're probably dead here, but they think that they have to do it either way. But they don't even go for the attack. Again, I assume they don't think that they're dead to this throne. And so even if they did attack there, we Prismatic Strands, it's not a big deal. We even draw the Thraben Charm, a little late for killing them off of that, but we get to just pass to their turn and see what they choose to put onto the battlefield with the Throne of the Dead 3. They tank for about a minute or 2 here. You see their time's all the way down at 9 minutes here, and then they concede, realizing that they have to choose a creature and that it is going to kill them. So that was a sweet win off the Suture Priest, which is one of the new additions to the deck, so already liking it in this matchup. We get an okay hand here, good interaction with the Standard Bearer and the Thraben Charm, 2 lands with the Eagles, and the Battle Screech for later. So we're going to keep this one and probably try to be a little bit more careful and play the Standard Bearer out a turn or two earlier because we know that they could have double Mesmeric Fiend now, and we're a little scared of that. So I was willing to even cycle the Eagles on turn 1 if I needed to be able to play the Standard Bearer on 2. We drew the second Plains, so we're still able to play our 1-drop, which is pretty nice. They Winding Way, and they hit an Avenging Hunter and a Priest. Play a Birchlore Rangers, we get to attack for 1. Even drawing another land here is nice. And I just play the Standard Bearer here. I was a little too hesitant because I didn't want it to get Mesmeric Fiended, and they did just play a Birchlore Rangers, which could give them their black. I will say I would have much preferred playing out the Rafine's Informant here because it's a 3-2 attacker, and I like getting in that early damage, especially because the only reason the Suture Priest worked so well last game is because I was able to attack them for so much damage early that the extra 5 damage they took off the Suture Priest really added up. If I'm not able to pressure them in the same way, the Suture Priest, if we draw another one, won't do that much good, but I was too worried about the Fiend taking our Standard Bearer that we just played it out here. They have a Priest and a Sentinel and a Quirion Ranger, so a lot of mana here that they play out, and another Sentinel, so we know they just have a Avenging Hunter in hand. We're going to play that Rafine's Informant. We get to ditch this Battle Screech and then flash it back. So we have a good number of creatures here. Can't really get in with their Reachers, but when we get a Guardian's Pledge or something like that, we're going to be in a pretty good spot. We also get to cycle this Eagles for an Idyllic Grange to buff up one of our creatures at some point here. They tap for a bunch of mana and cast an Avenging Hunter, once again taking the initiative, so we're going to have to try to find a way to take that. Last game, it actually worked out that they had to keep it, but this game, we definitely want to try to take it unless we get in a similar situation as last time. They also just play out a Nyxborn Hydra for 5. They cannot target their creature with this because it's a bestow effect. They would have to target a Standard Bearer, and just playing it as a 5/6 is honestly not bad. They have 3 Reachers right now, so it's going to be really hard for us to get in with the initiative, which could be pretty problematic. We'll cycle the Eagles, grab the Idyllic Grange, buff up a bird, and then I'm going to blow up the Nyxborn Hydra with the Thraben Charm. I can attack him with the bird here, and they have to lose a Sentinel, or they have to give us the initiative. I assume that they will chump, or rather trade, which is okay, because we also have this Core Skyfisher that we're going to be able to put down, and then use that to get in next turn. So we're going to slap that down, put an Idyllic Grange back into our hand so we can grow up our bird as well, or maybe some other creature. Unfortunately, they have the Forge to buff up their Sentinel, so now it's a 3/4, and they draw another Sentinel, so just getting all their Reachers. It's a 3/4, so even with the counter from our Idyllic Grange, Core Skyfisher is not going to be able to get past this, which is a little bit annoying. Luckily for us, they decide not to attack, even with their Avenging Hunter. They just want the blockers, I suppose. We're going to crack a clue here. We just get a Lunarch Veteran. We're going to buff up the Skyfisher. At some point, we're going to want it to be able to get to survive this Sentinel, and when we do, it's a 3/4. And we'll play out a Standard Bearer, just in case they have a way to get rid of one of them. I'm not really expecting that, but it's a creature we can play. They dumb us for 5 and find their 4th Sentinel. Always a good card in this matchup. We draw our Holy Light. Non-white creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn. That, right off the bat, they have 0 cards in hand, so they can't have any interaction. Can already wipe all of their mana dorks here, including their Quirion Ranger. So it's absolutely fantastic, but I'm a little greedy, or rather, there's really no reason not to get a little greedy, and I attack with all my non-Standard Bearer creatures, because if they block with a bunch of their creatures that have more than 1 toughness, then we'll be able to hit them with the Holy Light, and they block with everything absolutely perfectly. They might be expecting a Guardian's Pledge here, but that would be pretty bad for them too. But they block 3/4 and a 3/4. Theirs is going to become a 2/3. It's going to die. 1/2 on a 1/1. It's going to die. 1/2 on a 1/2. It's going to die. And a 5/4 on a 3/2. They're going to trade, but I'm okay with that. So we Holy Light and get to sweep their entire board away for just that card and a Rafine's Informant. We play a Lunarch Veteran, but they scoop it up, seeing as they have no creatures left. Round 2 here, we get a bit of a slow one with the Idyllic Grange, but we have a bunch of 1-drops, so we're able to play something on turn 1, turn 2, a Thraben Charm to blow up whatever we need to, and a Guardian's Pledge for the late game. So this one looks like a keeper for sure. They mold a 6, and we're going to start with a Veteran. In the dark, you usually want to start with a Veteran, because if they're mono red or something like that, any 1 life that we could gain could be really important. So usually there's no reason to start with the Thraben Inspector. The only reason would be if there's like a 1/1 they can play that I don't want to trade my Veteran with, but that's just not usually the case. I'm happy to trade this with anything they play, and the Thraben Inspector is going to get in for just as much damage. They start with a Forest and pass back to us. It could be Elves again, but usually they'd have a 1-drop, could be Walls, could be Brood Scale. Not a ton of green decks in the format, but considerably more since Modern Horizons 3 gave us Writhing Chrysalis, Basking Brood Scale, Nyxborn Hydra, and Malevolent Rumble. Really good set for green. We're going to play another Veteran because we're still not sure what's going on, and we don't really need the Thraben Inspector, and play a Plains, attack for 1 here. They go to 19, and they play a Geothermal Bog and cycle a Troll into a Swamp. So my thought here could be like a Jund Gardens is possible. We don't see that too often, but it's a possibility. We'll attack for 2 here, and I'm just going to play out the Suture Priest. I want to be mana efficient and might as well keep gaining life until we know what's going on. They Malevolent Rumble and turn up a Lotless Giant, Circle of the Land Druid, Scrapwork Mutt. They take the Mutt. So they're on Dredge, which we realize right away. After they do that, I don't play against Dredge too much, otherwise maybe I would have been a little more clued into it with the Troll. But I will say Dredge is probably not a bad matchup for us, seeing as we have 4 of this card that blows up an entire graveyard in our main deck, and life gain can be pretty good if they are only able to deal you like 20, 25 damage. We're able to get above that. Maybe we can survive through that as well. So they're going to pass to us, and we have another Lunarch Veteran. So they just have an 0-1, so we're going to attack in for 3, apply a little bit of pressure that we can, and might as well play out a Veteran, gain 3 life off of our Soul Sisters, and then play out our Thraben Inspector and gain another 4 life, all the way up to 30. So if life gain is going to save us here, we're doing a pretty good job already. They cycle a Generous Ant for a Forest and are going to play it right out. They Blanchwood Prowler. We get to ping them for 1 for every creature they play, and they're already at 12, so that could be pretty good too. They're going to play that Circle of Land Druid, milling a bunch more. They do have a couple Outlet Giants in the bin already, and an Acorn Harvest. We get another Suture Priest, so might as well make it much more costly for them and gain more life on our side. We're at 34. They do have a 2-2 now, so we weren't able to attack in, unfortunately. But they play another Circle of the Land Druid, take 2 more damage, down to 9. And pass to us. From here, we probably just want to start leaving up Thraben Charm, and if they go for a Reanimate or anything big, then we can blow up their graveyard. They're already at 9 creature cards in grave, so we definitely want to take care of that while we can. They unearth the Scrapwork Mutt and are able to discard the Stinkweed Imp, dredge it back, and bin 5 cards. They cycle a Generous Ent and are able to play that. Attacking for 2, but we're just going to take it. We like all of our creatures on the field where they are. And they're going to pass, so we get to crack a clue on the end step. Try to hit our 3rd land drop. We draw Prismatic Strands, another really good one in this matchup, seeing as their main win con is Lotleth Giant, which deals damage. It doesn't make you lose life, so we can prevent the damage from the Lotleth Giant with a Prismatic Strands. So we have a couple of answers to them right off the bat, and we're basically just waiting for them to go for a big play, and we're just going to blow up their graveyard or prevent all the damage or whatever. They just hardcast a Lotleth Giant, and I decide what I want to do. I could just blow up their graveyard now, but if they're able to rebuild it, then it could be problematic. I'd rather just play the Prismatic Strands, be mana efficient, and then next turn we have Prismatic Strands up for free and a Thraben Charm. I think is a little bit better here. So the Lotleth Giant would have hit us for 15, and then they could have Dread returned it and hit us for like 17. So they could have killed us there if we didn't have the answers. We get to play a Thraben Inspector and gain 5 life off of it. A nice Chaplain's Blessing off this Inspector. And just pass to them. Still waiting. They, of course, took 2 more damage off of their Lotleth Giant, and they scoop it up. They know we have the second Prismatic Strands, if not the Thraben Charm, and can see the writing on the wall a little bit there. We don't have any sideboard cards for this matchup, but as we saw, we have a pretty solid main deck against them anyway, so we don't bring in anything, but we think we'll have a pretty good shot anyway. This hand does not look good. We do have a Thraben Charm, and if we're just able to get to 2 mana, we can probably just win off a Thraben Charm, but if we don't hit that second land drop for a while, just Lunarch Veteran, Judge's Familiar is not really great, so we mulligan it and luckily get a pretty reasonable hand. No Thraben Charm, but 2 lands, and we get a Prismatic Strands, and we have a Raffine's Informant to ditch a Battle Screech. Judge's Familiar can counter like an Exhume or the 4-mana one, Dread Return, so we have a little bit of counterplay here. We draw Lunarch Veteran, so we're going to play that instead of the Familiar. Obviously, gaining the life is still pretty good. And they're going to turn 2 Rumble. They get to take a Scrapwork Mud off of it and bin a Stinkweed Imp, Lotleth Giant, and Exhume. Pretty good ones. We'll attack in for 1 here, and we just get to play our Raffine's Informant right away. Draw a card, and we're going to ditch the Battle Screech. I will say I thought that I wanted to hold up the Prismatic Strand so we could have 2 uses of it. I think this might have been a little greedy. It could be several turns before I draw a 3rd Plains, and if I don't draw that 3rd Plains, this Prismatic Strand is stuck in our hand, and we might end up losing to them, just being able to not have to deal with the Prismatic Strands. So I think this was a little greedy in retrospect. I probably should have ditched it instead. My thought process was, though, that this Battle Screech is even further away, and I don't want to, and I want to be able to cast it next turn, which I can do. But I think surviving through their graveyard stuff is probably more important. I will say they just sack their spawn, go for a Dread Return on the Lotleth Giant as just an early attacker. They only ping us for 2, which is totally fine. This Prismatic Strands can, prevent them from dealing damage just the same as any other combat deck. We draw another Informant, so I decided to play that and not make the same mistake, ditch the Prismatic Strands this time, and I still get to flashback that Battle Screech. We're going to take a hit for 6 here, or I could chump. We'll see how I'm feeling. They Conduit Pylons and attack. I decide we might as well not make it easier for them. We'll lose 1 bird if it makes it so we don't take 6 damage here. And they cast another Dread Return on their other giant, hit us for only 1 damage, but now they have 2 6/5s on the field, which is pretty good. We have, of course, Skyfisher. We're going to be able to pick up that Plains and play a Inspector or a Judge's Familiar. We go for the Familiar just in case they have another Dread Return. They don't currently have a target for it, but if they do and they cast another one from hand, then that's, a little bit of way we can interact with them. We attack for 1 with this bird token because we don't need it, and I realize that if they attack with both of these giants, I can just flashback the Prismatic Strands and trade the strands from both of their giants. Now, we put them back in their graveyard, which is where they want them, but we're not going to be able to take 6, or rather 12 damage from them every single turn, so we are going to have to deal with them in some way. And if we can just trade 1 Prismatic Strands for 2 of them, I think that's okay. They play a Scrapwork Mutt and discard a Stinkweed Imp and draw a card. They actually don't dredge the Imp. I guess they want some something from hand. And they play a Stinkweed Imp out, I guess as a nice blocker for our flyers. And they go for the attack with both giants. So we're able to divvy up our creatures to have 5 damage on each of them, flashback the Prismatic Strands, and blow up both of their guys, which now puts us in a pretty good spot to just start attacking with everything. We get Idyllic Grange, which is not bad. We're going to Rafine's Informant. We do want to dig for a Thraben Charm if we can, because there is still the possibility that they could start dredging and we'll be in some real trouble. But for now, we get to attack for 8 here. They can trade if they want to, but they decline, going down to 10. And they do dredge their Stinkweed Imp, milling a bunch of cards, nothing super relevant, but a bunch of creatures. They play their second Stinkweed Imp so that they have another blocker here. And they actually go for the Dread Return on the Lotleth Giant, but only drain us for about 8, was it? No, 10. So we're down to 14. If they can get another one off next turn, maybe they can get there. But we're able to just attack with the entire team. And even if they block a Rafine's Informant, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 damage. So I don't think they did the math there. I'm sure they didn't think they could kill us, but I don't think they did the math realizing that they were just dead on the crackback. If they left their 3 creatures on board, they could have at least survived for a turn. But I think they also knew it was pretty dire in general because of the cards that we have in our main deck. Round 3 here, we get another decent hand. Battle Screech is a nice 4-drop, 3 lands. We'll want another Plains, a couple 1-drops, and a Thraben Charm. Usually this is kind of what I look for. A couple early drops, obviously a curve of 1, 2 is better, but this is okay. A Thraben Charm in your opening hand is almost always a good sign because it just does a little bit of everything you're going to need. You're going to need something it does in most every game. And a Battle Screech or a Guardian's Pledge, something late game is often nice to have a kind of a goal for how you're planning to win the game. So we're going to keep this one, start with the Veteran, and pass it to them. They Forest an Elvish Mystic, so it looks like another Elves matchup. We'll see how this one goes. I'm attacking for 1, happy to trade for their Mystic. We drew a Plains, so we get to play that and a Thraben Inspector. This Grange will be giving us a counter in a couple turns. They're going to Winding Way. Early Winding Way is usually not a bad sign for us. They get a Generous Ant and Nyxborn Hydra and don't even play any 1-drop, so no 1-drops in hand is a good sign. You get to attack for 2 here. And I could Thraben Charm their Elvish Mystic, but I don't think there's really a reason to do that. We're going to just crack the clue in case we draw a 1-drop, and we do. We get another Veteran, so we're going to put that on the field and pass to them. Next turn, we get to Battle Screech, gain 8 life from our Veterans, which is pretty good. They cycle their Generous Ent, and play a forest for turn. And they're definitely not in a good spot because they just run out a 3/4 Nyxborn Hydra, which is not that scary to us. We're just going to Battle Screech. I don't mind them having this now. We can Thraben Charm it when we need to go for a big attack. But until then, it's just a 3/4 and not getting any bigger. And they play another Nyxborn Hydra as a 2/3 and a Well-Wisher, but they only have 2 Elves, so we're not in a terrible spot here. They do have 2 Reachers that can block our birds, so I don't think it's egregious that they did that either. But it's definitely not looking great. We do get to play this Grange, and I'm going to grow the Inspector because it can at least survive against this Hydra, the smaller one. So if we Thraben Charm their big one and attack with everything, I'd rather the counter be on that Inspector, which is going to survive, rather than a bird, which would just get eaten. And I do think since they're in a rough spot here and they have the Well-Wisher, which can gain them a little bit of life, we want to go on the really aggressive side. So we're going to play out our Inspector, draw a card with our Clue, see if we get like a Guardian's Pledge or something like that, and then blow up their big Hydra, attack with everything. We can lose 1 bird here. I'm not expecting them to block with the Well-Wisher, but we get in for a cool 7 damage, so I think it's worth it. They go down to 10. They have a Timberwatch Elf, which is annoying, and 2 Llanowar Elves, so Timberwatch is going to be good. They go up to 15 here, gaining life off of the Well-Wisher now quite a bit, honestly. We're going to attack with the team here. Bluffing a Guardian's Pledge so that hopefully they block with some of their Elves. If they don't block with anything, they would die to a Guardian's Pledge. They have to block at least 3 creatures to not die. So I'm hoping that they block and lose a couple of their Elves to our 1/1s because that would be beneficial for us. We don't need any more life, so I don't really care about losing the veterans. And we're still able to Inspector, Battle Screech, flashback the Battle Screech. So I'm just hoping that we can get a little bit of extra value out of this. They do a lot of blocking and unblocking and decide to lose one of their Llanowar Elves, but not both of them, thinking that if we have the Guardian's Pledge, they're pretty screwed either way. I think it's a pretty reasonable play that they made. But we're able to get at least 1 Llanowar Elf out of the deal, and they go down to 11, but of course they are gaining quite a bit of life every single turn. We're going to do our play of Battle Screech, Inspector. Battle Screech, gain a bunch of life, and 5 more creatures. And we are definitely looking for that Guardian's Pledge here. They have a Generous Ant, so another Reacher. It's going to make it quite devastating to keep attacking with our board. We don't want to be losing too many creatures, especially when they're offsetting it by 4 life every single turn. And their Timberwatch Elf is online now, so it can also pump to save a creature or, kill a different one. We play an Informant, digging for that Guardian's Pledge. Just pitch a Judge's Familiar and play out an Inspector. At least we're getting a couple more creatures every single turn. The moment we get that Guardian's Pledge, we're going to be in a good spot. They have another Timberwatch Elf, though, and then Well-Wisher up to 20, so not much we've done here. But we get a Battle Screech, so that's 4 more creatures. As long as we find the Guardian's Pledge in the next several turns, we'll have a good shot, but of course the Well-Wisher is going to put them out of range at some point. So they're going to crack their food on the end step here. They have a Lead the Stampede and get 3 creatures, Double Priest and a Masked Vandal. Luckily the Masked Vandals don't do too much. It could take a Clue away, but they decide to go for a Priest of Titania here. Well-Wish up to 29. And we get to crack our Clue, play our Rafine's Informant, ditch this Plains, play our Thraben Inspector, and now we have an Eagles of the North. If we're able to get another Plains, which I know we just discarded 1, then we're going to be able to attack for a big chunk next turn. We have 10 birds, and they only have 2 Reachers, so I decide that it's worth it to lose 2 birds to hit them for 8. Next turn, hopefully we can draw Plains, attack with everything after this Eagles of the North, and hopefully that'll be enough to finish them off, if we are lucky. I haven't quite done the math, but also it's so hard to figure out the math when we don't know how many more Elves they're going to be able to play with their Well-Wisher and whatnot. They tap for a bunch with their Priest and cast a Masked Vandal. Decide to take out our Clue, understandably. Play another Masked Vandal. No Clue to take out. Priest of Titania. Well-Wisher back up to 30. And then pass it to us. So they have 9 blockers. And we draw that Plains, so we're just going to go for the Eagles. And before I swing with everything, I do briefly count what they have going on. They have 2 Timberwatch Elves, which is +9, so that's 18 damage. They have a Nyxborn Hydra for 2, which is trample, so even a blocker doesn't do much there, so that's 20, 25, and then a bunch of 1/1s. So not 46 damage by any means. If they draw a Quirion Ranger, they can maybe get there. If they draw Lead the Stampede into like 3 or 4 creatures, they could definitely kill us next turn, but that's kind of the case either way. So we just decide to attack with the whole team, except for the Eagles, of course, which can't attack, and see how much damage we can deal to them. And if it doesn't kill them, ideally we can finish them off next turn. And every creature that they lose will hopefully reduce their Well-Wisher count. They only block with 3 creatures, but they go down to 1, so not quite dead here. But we have enough creatures left over that we should be able to kill them if we survive. Then again, they do have a Well-Wisher for 9. They're up to 10. Maybe they have enough blockers. We still definitely need a Guardian's Pledge, and this is why Elves is quite the tough matchup for White Weenie. Even with all the creatures we have, we are not necessarily winning this game. They top deck a Nyxborn Hydra, play it for 11, giving this generous Ent 16-18, and they have 2 Timberwatch Elves out. And we concede, but this is 16 damage. 2 Timberwatch is 18. So that would be 34. And they have a Masked Vandal attacking, 35. But we're at 46? Why did we concede? I just played this game earlier, and I remember conceding, but I feel like I remember this generous Ent being like a 30-30. But based on this, it was not. Why didn't they put 10 more mana into it? It would have been a 34. They could make it a 43. They could have killed me here. What's going on? Okay, so I just went through the replay again, and it still says it's just a 16 power creature. They didn't dump more mana into it, which is weird because I'm pretty confident that I did not concede when I was not dead on board. They do have an extra 9 mana they could pump into it with the Priest, which would make this a 25 power creature, plus 9, plus 9. That would be 43 damage. I can absorb 3 of it, so that's 40, and then I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more damage, so I would be dead exactly. Maybe I conceded before they decided to attack with all their creatures, to be fair, but I'm pretty sure this was larger earlier. I don't really know what's going on. In any case, we conceded, we lost the game. If I conceded prematurely, I guess that's possible, and that's my bad, because if we're not dead on board here and we top deck a Guardian's Pledge, we certainly would win the game, even with them gaining 9 life. So now I feel like this replay is gaslighting me, but in any case, maybe we conceded prematurely. Either way, we go to the next game. Now with my mental faculties properly called into question, we make the same sideboard as last time, 4 Standard Bearers in and 2 Holy Days in, and we take out those 6 1-drops. Actually, we opt to keep in the Thraben Inspectors this time because that's obviously more optimal. But in any case, we get a hand with no 1-drop, which does feel bad, but we have a Standard Bearer and a Prismatic Strands and these 2 Rafine's Informants, so maybe we can get a fast start going. So we're going to keep this one. Start with the Plains and pass to them. They get a Fyndhorn Elves on the turn 1. We get a Suture Priest, and we're going to play that. It's really early that they're probably going to play a million creatures, and this will deal quite a bit of damage. I think it's worth going for over the Standard Bearer, and until they have a Mesmeric Fiend, first of all, this is a new opponent, maybe they didn't side in Mesmeric Fiend, but until they have the black mana to make the Mesmeric Fiend, I'm not too worried about them taking the Standard Bearer. I'll probably try to get it down pretty soon, but the Suture Priest felt better here, and they attacked with the Fyndhorn Elves, which is a great sign for us. We do play the Standard Bearer again, fearing that they could take it, and being sad that we can't get this Rafine's Informant out, because obviously I'd like to attack for 3 damage as quickly as possible. They lead the Stampede here, and they find 4 creatures, 2 Masked Vandals, Nyxborn, and a Generous Ent. They play out a Masked Vandal, but no target for it, and nothing else to play is pretty nice for us. We Rafine's Informant, we're going to be able to pitch one of these Prismatic Strands. No attacks, so a little annoying there too. But they get to play a Timberwatch Elf, that's going to be quite frustrating, and a Masked Vandal, pass back to us. This Timberwatch Elf does have to target a Flag Bearer, which is pretty nice. However, both of their Masked Vandals are Flag Bearers. I learned this in a previous video. So they're going to be able to buff them up. Same with the Nyxborn Hydra, they're going to be able to cast on their Masked Vandal. So the Standard Bearers aren't going to be as good this game as a game where they wouldn't see any Masked Vandals. We are going to attack for 3 because I'm happy for them to lose a Masked Vandal here, but they decide to take it. We do have a Guardian's Pledge, so we could play for that. We're going to play our Skyfisher, pick up a Plains, and replay it so we can get down to Rafine's Informant. We're hoping to go for a fast aggro start with this Guardian's Pledge. We're able to pitch another Prismatic Strand, so we also have a couple layers of protection there. They play another Masked Vandal, so Standard Bearer really not doing any work here. And they just throw out a Generous Ent, so now they've got a blocker for just about anything we have going on. Battle Screech is good, but we got to get to our 4th land, so let's Lunarch Veteran and Rafine's Informant. Actually, we can just pitch the Battle Screech if we want. and we decide to, we do draw the planes, but we're not pitching a Guardian's Pledge, and if we pitch the planes, then we still might not be able to find the Battle Screech. Might as well just get the 2/1/1s while we can. We also gain 4 life off of it because of our 2 Soul Sisters, or Soul very older brother. They are going to crack a food on the end step, go back up to 14. And we're always counting creatures in this type of matchup. Right now they have 7, but they're tapping, so they only have 5 blockers here. We currently have 9 attackers with our Guardian's Pledge. Each attacker does a minimum of 3 damage because it's +2/+2, and no creatures in our deck have 0 power. So always just counting how many creatures we can get through, because we only have to hit them with 5 creatures here to be able to kill them. Ideally, we'll be able to make that happen. They are tapping a bunch here, definitely going for a Nyxborn Hydra on a Masked Vandal, which is going to be problematic. We do have the Prismatic Strands to save it off for a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. They don't go for the attack. Definitely worried about our attack on them, which is fair, seeing as they only have 1 Reacher before the Nyxborn Hydra. So we are not dying yet, which is good. We get another Standard Bearer for all the good it's going to do. It's at least another attacker when we do flunge at them. And we actually decide to flunge right now. I played the Standard Bearer so that we can flashback Prismatic Strands to keep our creatures alive. They don't have enough damage, unless if they get like another Nyxborn Hydra or something like that. They don't have enough damage to kill us on our turn. I made sure of that. This is 9. This is currently 6. Obviously, they could play a million Elves. They could always have the possibility of killing us, but just I'm not seeing it on the board. And I'm trying to make it so that we can Guardian's Pledge next turn for lethal and only need to get in like 2 or 3 creatures. So by attacking with everything here, but we're going to Prismatic Strands to keep our creatures alive, we can hopefully get in for 5 or 6 damage, put them down to like 8 would be great, and then yeah, get in for next turn with the Guardian's Pledge. They do a lot of switching off, not really sure what we're going for, and we go for the Prismatic Strands. This is a defensive one, but we are in fact getting in for 6 damage off of this. We don't lose any of our creatures. The only fear is that they, kill us and win the game. But we put them down to 8, so now we just need 3 more attackers than they have blockers, and we'll be able to get them the Guardian's Pledge. They attack for 9 with the Nyxborn Hydra Masked Vandal, putting us to 23. And then they cast Aquarian Ranger, so that can untap a creature. That can untap a Flag Bearer, that is. And they have another Nyxborn Hydra for the other Masked Vandal. So they're going to pass to us, but their creature count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 untapped. Aquarian Ranger can untap this one, so 7. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 creatures, which means we get in with 3 unblocked creatures. Guardian's Pledge is going to make that 9 damage. We're going to get there just barely, assuming they don't have anything. I don't really expect them to have any counterspell or anything like that for a white instant. It's always a possibility, but we're going to lose this game if we go much longer because of their giant Nyxborn Hydras, so we're just going to have to make the play here. They do go for the untap, of course, and block with just about everything that they can, swapping a lot, but we go for the Guardian's Pledge, and we're able to get them for 9 damage, putting them to -2 and just barely squeaking out that game. Game 3 here, we of course have the same sideboard, and this hand is tough. It's not very good, but it feels like we need every card we can get. We do have the idyllic range with the lands for it, but 4 lands is almost always more than you want. Unless if we had like a 1, 2, 3 curve, maybe I would keep 4 lands, but not even against Elves because I don't think that's good enough. We need the interaction of Thraben Charm, but we also need a Standard Bearer, but we need a little more aggression. It's just not quite there. The Guardian's Pledge is nice to have for the future, but right now it's not doing anything. So I think we have to mulligan this one, as painful as it is. And we get a little bit better of a hand. We get 3 lands, 2 Standard Bearer, Lunarch Veteran, and a Guardian's Pledge. Pretty similar, honestly. We switched out a land and a Thraben Charm for 2 Standard Bearers, but more creatures is good. I will say we end up bottoming a Standard Bearer, but I will say I think 1 Standard Bearer is better than 1 Thraben Charm because it's an extra creature that can attack, although it probably won't attack too much, and of course it holds them off from killing us super, super early. We draw a Rafine's Informant, though, which is a pretty good one here. Hopefully that can sculpt our hand a little bit more. They play a Priest of Titania, and they whiffed on their first turn. I could Thraben Charm their Priest, knowing that they didn't play any 1-drop, but as always, I just feel like I need to save this for something a little bit more impactful, especially it's good against Hydras and things like that, so we're going to keep it for now. Play a Rafine's Informant, definitely offer the trade here, which they decline taking a damage, and they put a Well-Wisher out on the field, and a Masked Vandal. So Well-Wisher can start gaining them 3 life right now. We play our Standard Bearer and have to just pass. But as mentioned before, the Masked Vandal is a Flag Bearer. So they Nyxborn Hydra it up, 5/7 and attack in. They do leave themselves totally open, although they are gaining 3 off the Well-Wisher. So we attack in for 4, offsetting a little more than that life. We play our Thraben Inspector, and we're just going to leave up our Clue and our Thraben Charm here. We can blow up the Nyxborn Hydra if we need. They Priest of Titania, and then go for another Nyxborn Hydra. I will say that these Elves players... No offense to them, they often take a lot of time. You can see they're 7 minutes down on time. So they're going for a fast one here with just multiple Nyxborn Hydras on this one Masked Vandal. They gained 4 life off the Well-Wisher. Luckily, we have a Thraben Charm, so we're going to blow up the bigger Nyxborn Hydra. Just take 4 here. Down to 14, though. We get to play out an Inspector and swing with the whole team. I really don't mind if they want to trade for this Standard Bearer, seeing as they already have their Nyxborn Hydra out and nothing currently that targets. And we want to get in every point of damage we can. So they take it down to 17. We draw another Thraben Charm, so we're looking okay here. We can blow up this Nyxborn Hydra and then block the Vandal. They play a Findorn Elves, and they have the 3rd Nyxborn Hydra, this time with 10 counters. Thank God we have this Thraben Charm, so we're going to blow that up. They gain 5 life, but again, we're going to take 4, down to 11. We're still dying pretty quickly, much quicker than they are, but we get another Standard Bearer. Look at that. We're going to crack a Clue, and we get a Battle Screech. So if we're able to Battle Screech here, we can maybe Guardian's Pledge, and maybe we can get in for lethal. I leave back our Novice Inspector just as a blocker. 1 Novice Inspector left back means they can't attack with any of their 1/1s if they want to. Like, their Priests don't do anything if they don't draw something that's relevant. And I'd rather not take 3 extra damage for only dealing them 1. So we're going to leave 1 back, but we hit them for 5. They play an Elvish Mystic, so more life off the Well-Wisher, but just swing for 4 here. We're down to 7, but we get that Plains, which is great because we're able to Battle Screech. Lunarch Veteran offsets the 4 damage we just took, and we're able to swing in with our team. They trade the Findorn Elves for the Rafine's Informant, but we do have that Guardian's Pledge, and they top deck another Mana Dork, attack for 4, and we're down to 7 again. We get a Core Skyfisher, though. We crack our Clue. I could just play our 2 creatures, but I'd rather crack our Clue here and be able to get a Thraben Charm or something like that. We find a Prismatic Strands, which is a pretty good one. We obviously can't use it this turn, but assuming we don't die next turn, ideally, we can hold it up and we'll be able to survive their attack and then probably get them back with a Guardian's Pledge. We also have this Idyllic Grange, which we're going to be able to buff up this Inspector. I could buff up a Flyer, but I realized the way we're going to win this game is through damage is through the Guardian's Pledge. That 1 extra damage a couple times from a bird isn't super relevant. The way we lose this game is by them having more damage on their Nyxborn Hydra. So I'd rather have more toughness to block with than damage to attack with at the moment. That said, we're still attacking for 4 flying because we're not jumping with them, and I do want to keep their life total as low as I can. So they're at 22. We pass back to them. They draw Forest, which is great for us. They go up to 28, and they cannot attack this time. So we are in a good spot. We draw a Holy Light. Phenomenal. We're able to wipe their board except for their Masked Vandal, which could still kill us in 2 turns, so we need to be a little careful. I don't want to just flunge right here, because if they get another Nyxborn Hydra, I guess I wouldn't quite do it. But I do want to be a little careful, so I just pass here. Maybe a little overly cautious. I probably could have attacked with about 6 of those creatures. But they get a Priest of Titania, pass it back to us, and we get a Plains. Now I'm able to swing with the team. They block a Standard Bearer. I just let them have it. I don't want a Guardian's Pledge here because it wasn't quite lethal. A Guardian's Pledge was 2 damage short of being lethal, so I don't want to blow it there. I'd rather hold up the Prismatic Strands so we cannot die this next turn, play out a Standard Bearer, and next turn we should definitively be able to Guardian's Pledge them for the win. They attack for 4 here, and really there's nothing that could kill us here, especially because we could respond with the Prismatic Strands, but I just decided to use my mana, prevent the 4 damage anyway, and then we have the Prismatic Strands up for next turn if we really need. They tap out for a Generous Ent, and we're able to attack with the whole team with a Guardian's Pledge, and we even have a Suture Priest to flashback this Prismatic Strands if we need to, but the Guardian's Pledge is going to be able to deal them lethal damage, putting them to -7. Round 4 here, we get a pretty reasonable hand, just a lot of creatures, but nothing wrong with that. Also a decent curve of Thraben Inspector, Rafine's Informant, Skyfisher into Inspector again, so we're going to throw that down. And they have the Great Furnace, Clockwork Percussionist. So we're against Mono Red, which is honestly supposed to be a great matchup here. So they obviously could still have a great start, be able to steamroll us, but ideally we'll be able to survive quite nicely. We play Rafine's Informant, pick up a Suture Priest, which is going to be good life for us, and ditch that Eagles just to buff up our Informant so it can block here. They go for a Synthesizer, get a Great Furnace, and just Galvanic Blast us to the face for 4 damage since they have 4 artifacts on the field. Totally fine. We're going to attack for a bunch, and they chump the 3/2 right away with the Clockwork Percussionist. They get a Bushwhacker off the top. We're able to Skyfisher and play back the Inspector. They have the Bushwhacker. If they also have the Kuldotha, then we're going to be taking a bunch of damage, but we have 2 blockers, so not too much. And they go for a Chain Lightning to kill the Skyfisher, so we know we're not getting rebirthed. They do Bushwhack and attack. I could block and trade, but I'd rather just block when it's a 1/1, so we just take the 2 damage. We're still at 14, so we're not in too much danger here. Now we get to play our Suture Priest to gain at least 1 life off of it, playing our Rafine's Informant. We're going to ditch this Judge's Familiar and attack for 4. In general, the opponent is the beatdown in this match. We definitely want to be the control. We want to sit back, but our opponent's not really doing that much. We also don't want to give them too much time to find just a bunch of burn, so we're happy to attack here, even if they were able to do the Kuldotha Bushwhack, which we knew they didn't have a Kuldotha last turn, so they would have had to draw it in like 1 card. If they were able to do that, we could still block and we wouldn't be in too bad of a spot. They sack their Synth and get a Lightning Bolt off of it. Great Furnace, and then bolt our Skyfisher. Attack with the Bushwhacker. We're not trading the Suture Priest for it. It's only 1 damage, and the Suture Priest is certainly going to gain us 1 or more life. We draw an Inspector here, so we're going to be able to Inspector, Skyfisher, Inspector, which is pretty great. It's going to get us 2 more clues and 3 life off the Suture Priest. I'm going to attack with this Rafine's Informant. Happy to trade for their Samurai if they want to, and they do. So we're going to make that play. Skyfisher, double Inspector, going up to 17 life. They have a Synthesizer. Gonna flip up a Tomb Raider, bolt the Suture Priest, but it's done some good work already. Then they Kuldotha Rebirth, find a Mountain off of their Synth, play that, play their Tomb Raider. A lot of creatures, a Lackey as well, but we have a bunch of high toughness creatures, which is one of the reasons why White Weenie is so good against this deck. 1/2s just match up very favorably against the 1/1s, a 2/3 against their 2/2. So we're going to crack a couple clues here, seeing if we draw anything relevant. We draw a Lunarch Veteran, so we're going to throw that out before any of our other creatures. I could have saved it so we could ensure getting at least 1 life, because maybe they like bolt it here, but it's not too big of a deal if they do that. They crack their Lackey just to see if they draw anything good here, and they do find a Chain Lightning, so they get to kill our Skyfisher and attack with their Tomb Raider. I'm happy to trade an Inspector for it. And we get another Inspector. We're going to crack a clue. Get a Guardian's Pledge. So I'm going to put down another Inspector. I could put down the Judge's Familiar, but I think it's okay to crack another clue here. We have enough creatures already, I think. And if we did draw another Plains, we could put down a Familiar. We have this Guardian's Pledge, so it's possible we just go for the win in a couple turns here if they don't get too crazy. They're going to sack their Furnace. They are certainly flooded here. And they have a Tomb Raider into a Bushwhacker. Not bad for them at all. But we do have 3 blockers. So I'm going to trade the Lunarch Veteran for a 1/1, and I could block 2 1/1s with the Inspectors, but I only take 1 more damage by blocking the Tomb Raider, and I get to keep a 1/2, which can block all the 1/1s once they've lost their power buff. So I think it's worth it in this case if the 1 damage isn't crazy relevant at the moment. I take 8 down to 10, but I'm not too low, seeing as they only have 1 card left in hand. I'd rather keep the creature around. We get another Guardian's Pledge, so here I'm going to crack a clue. We get another Inspector, so I'm going to play that, and I could go for double Familiar, but I'd rather disturb this Luminous Phantom so that if we lose creatures to blocking or something like that, we'll at least gain a little bit of life back from them. So we got that going for us, and they Kuldotha Rebirth, a Great Furnace. I'm scared of another Bushwhacker, but luckily they don't have it. So we get to crack a clue here. We get a Thraben Charm, which is okay. Play out 2 Judge's Familiars and just pass to them. Hope they don't get anything crazy, and they just pass it back to us. And I draw a Plains, and I realize they're at 14 life. I have 3 flyers. Double Guardian's Pledge makes them all 5/5, so I can hit for 15 right now. If they have a Lightning Bolt, they will be able to kill one of them, and I won't be able to quite kill them. But they'll have to spend their Lightning Bolt, and then they only have 7 creatures versus my 2. They'd have to top deck really well to be able to kill us from there. So I'm hoping that they just don't have the Bolt here. Go for the double Guardian's Pledge, and they have no response to the first, no response to the second, and we're able to put them to -1. From the sideboard, we get 3 Hollows, 3 Erishin Clerics, and 2 Holy Lights to be able to combat their damage and their go-wide strategy. Thraben Charm is just a 2-mana destroy 1 creature in this matchup. Not great, so we take those out. 1 Guardian's Pledge, even though they won us the game last time. Usually we just need to stall them out and then we'll win, so we don't need a ton of the Guardian's Pledges, so we take 1 of them out. As much as I want to try it out in this league, it doesn't do too much. Maybe we get them with like an End the Festivities or something countered, or a Lightning Bolt, but like usually it's just not going to do too much. So we take those out, and we get this opening hand, which doesn't look great. We do have 2 Holy Lights, so we're able to blow up their whole board, but we don't have anything till turn 3, which is the Holy Light. And if they just have 1/2s or 2/2s, like if they start with Tomb Raider or Lackey or anything like that, we're going to be in for a bad time. So we definitely got a mulligan this one, and we do get a slightly better hand. 2 Plains here. We put back the Guardian's Pledge, just not what we're going for in the early turns, and we need to survive to the late game. So we do have Lunarch Veteran as some life gain and a bunch of creatures, which is nice. They start with a Furnace, pass to us. So we get another Battle Screech. If we get to that point, that'll be pretty good. They Kuldotha Rebirth their own Great Furnace right away, and then they elect Trickery our Lunarch Veteran. Two things I was not really sure was going to happen right there, but it's okay. As long as they don't have the Bushwhacker next turn, which they probably don't have the Bushwhacker, or they don't have the land, because otherwise they would probably do that next turn. As long as they don't have that, we might be okay. So we get to Rafine's Informant and just pitch one of these Battle Screeches. 3-2, probably could just die to a Bolt here, and it does, Galvanic Blast actually, but they're able to attack for 3, but we can get down some more creatures. We draw planes, so we're able to put down that Inspector, put down a Luminous Phantom we go for over the Skyfisher. Skyfisher blocks better, but it also dies to a Bolt. I'd rather try to gain some life off of the Phantom. They attack with the whole team, and I realize that they probably just have another Elect Trickery. So if I block with the Inspector, they're going to Elect Trickery, take out both of my guys anyway. So I might as well block both their creatures, even though I don't want to trade out the Phantom. And they go for a Cast into the Fire, deal 1 damage to each of them, but 4 damage so that they keep their Goblin. So I'm glad I did that. I was able to block an extra damage, and Cast into the Fire in this case did exactly what an Elect Trickery would do, 2 mana for 1 damage to each of our creatures. So we trade off 1 here. They get to keep 2 Goblins, and they play a Tomb Raider, but no artifact for the Tomb Raider. We get a Plains, so we could go for the Battle Screech, but we can't flash it back, so I decide just to go for the Skyfisher, pick up the Plains, and play it again. We can hold up a Clue token here, draw a new card. They Chain Lightning the Skyfisher, fair enough, but they play a Mountain out and have no cards in hand. They can cycle their Furnace, but otherwise they're just attacking for 3. We get to crack our Clue, and we find a Veteran, which is a great card as a precursor to our Battle Screech. And we get a Hollow, so I decide I'm going to play the Veteran, cycle our Eagles to get a Grange, buff up our Veteran, and we have the Hollow to keep it alive, which is going to be pretty nice so that we can Battle Screech next turn and gain a bunch of life. They crack their Furnace, and then go for the Galvanic Blast on our Veteran. We're going to try to save it. They did draw a Lightning Bolt, so they're able to kill it, and the Hollow does not gain us any life because the Galvanic Blast fizzles, so it was not a waste. We were able to take 2 cards out of their hand, but we didn't gain any life off of it, and they do get to attack for 3, putting us down to 10 here, but they're still top decking, and we say to ourselves, it would be a great time to draw another Lunarch Veteran. It's more life, and it's a 1-drop that we can play, that we can also flash back the Battle Screech right away, and then we top deck it. So someone's looking out for us. We get to do that Battle Screech, flash it back, go back up to 14 with 5 creatures now on board, and they concede right there. I mean, we have another Battle Screech in our graveyard, which we're able to flash back again, start attacking, we gain so much life. They're definitely pretty far from winning that one, unless they top decked an Elect Trickery there, which I assume they did not. Round 5 here, we have quite the stinker, just the 1 land and no Eagles or anything, so we're definitely going to mulligan that. Our opponent says good luck to us, and then I realize their username is Kuldotha Red. This is someone I've played against quite a few times recently, and what I remember when I played against them was that they're usually an Elves player. So we'll see if they are again, but that's exactly what I'm expecting. I mulligan to this. Looks pretty reasonable, and thinking that my opponent is probably on Elves, I decide to bottom this Lunarch Veteran. If they're mono red, I'm going to really regret it. Obviously, I'd prefer to get rid of the Thraben Charm in that case, but if they're Elves, I'm really going to need that Thraben Charm for Nyxborn Hydra, a Turn Timber Elf, or anything like that. So thinking that I know what my opponent's on, I get rid of the Veteran, and they play Affinahorn Elves right away, so I made the right choice. We get a Plains, play out our Inspector, and so let's go. 3rd Elves match of the league. They go Quirion Ranger into a Well-Wisher, so early Well-Wisher. I have to decide if I want to kill it early. I've realized that at some point there is a breaking point where you need to kill the Well-Wisher, because if they're gaining 5 every single turn, don't have any other threats, and I'm only attacking for 4 or 5, you got to kill it. But it's not right, I don't think, in this matchup to just kill it right away. Because if I do that and then they run out of Priest of Titania and a Turn Timber Elf, and then they're able to get a 7 mana or whatever Hydra out, we're going to lose pretty quickly, and we're going to wish we had the Thraben Charm. So I'm going to hold it, I'm going to play the Skyfisher, pick up the Novice Inspector here, and they lead the Stampede into Masked Vandal, Quirion, Generous Ent. Play the Quirion Ranger, play another Quirion Ranger, and man, wish we had a Holy Light in our main deck at this point. We might have to if we keep playing against this many Elves. We draw an Eagles of the North, attack for 2 here, just to keep their life total a little low. We get to play a Novice Inspector and just pass to them. I want to hold up the Thraben Charm, but also I want to hold up the Clue, because if they go for a Maxed Vandal here, I'd like to crack the Clue that they try to exile, so we don't lose any value there. They cycle a Generous Ent, playing their Forest, and indeed play the Masked Vandal, which we will sacrifice. I don't think I'm going to get too punished by not Thraben Charming anything this turn, so I think it's worth keeping the card. And we get another Prismatic Strands. I will say that this is 4 turns of holding them off if they do get to the point where they're attacking for a bunch. We get a Veteran, and cycle this Eagles of the North. We're a couple turns away from it, and I'd prefer this Grange to start attacking for a little bit more damage. But we do need to start thinking about killing this Well-Wisher. We hit them for 3 and pass, deciding not quite the right time. And our opponent taps for some mana here and goes for a Generous Ent. So 3/4 Skyfish are not quite big enough to attack past the Generous Ent. We crack a Clue here. We can't kill the Generous Ent with a Thraben Charm yet anyway. Not sure if we want to do that, but we do draw the Thraben Inspector, so if we want to, it's an opportunity we could do. We get a Rafine's Informant. Let's dig for something and bin a Prismatic Strands here. We draw Battle Screech, so maybe, like we've done a couple times previously, we can just go around the Generous Ent if we're able to Battle Screech, get a million guys out, and then Guardians Pledge it up. But I realize if we're able to do that, it's going to be... They got to stop gaining life. We cannot let them keep gaining life if we're going to do that, so we're going to kill the Well-Wisher finally. 31's already a very hard life total to get past, but we need to do something. They play an Avenging Hunter here. Now with the 3 Prismatic Strands and a Battle Screech in hand, this looks like it might be okay. They currently only have 1 Reacher, so we're going to go for the Battle Screech, and if we're able to just throw a bunch of birds at them, take the initiative, and retain it for several turns, we might have a good shot of winning this one. So we're going to flashback the Battle Screech, throw out a Novice Inspector, or Thraben, excuse me, not a Novice. This guy is a professional. This ma'am is a professional. This person is a professional from Thraben. They get to buff up their Avenging Hunter up to a 7/6, play out an Elvish Mystic, 1 card in hand that they're sandbagging, it looks like. It could just be a forest or something. They pass to us. We're definitely going to swing with all the birds. Definitely willing to sacrifice one of them for the initiative with all these Prismatic Strands that we have. Search up a Plains, play that. We'll crack a Clue, see if we draw anything relevant. We get a Lunarch Veteran, so might as well throw that out. We can still Prismatic Strands them. They play a Forest, and they don't even attack here. They don't necessarily have a great attack, but a 7/6 attacker, like... It would trade for a Skyfisher and a Rafine's Informant, and I'd have to throw something else in there to not take trample damage. Like, it's not great. Maybe they're just hoping to get, like, a Turn Timber Elf, which is going to give it +8 or whatever, which is totally fair. Maybe they need that with the trample would be a little bit better. But we get to go to the initiative. I don't really care about the counters here. I'd prefer the Scry, but I do want to trap them because the 5 life could be relevant. I definitely want the Archives, the extra card, and the Throne we're going to get to either way, assuming we do get to there. But we're going to buff up the Skyfisher. It can at least attack past the Generous Ent now if it gets blocked, and we have a Guardian's Pledge, which we just draw. Maybe it'll eat it. And also, it's just better to trade with like an Avenging Hunter or something like that. So we crack a Clue here. We get another Battle Screech, and we still have this Prismatic in our yard. So we're just going to Battle Screech, gain some more life, flash it back, and if we draw like a second Guardian's Pledge, maybe we can go for a massive attack for +4, excuse me. They Winding Way, and they hit a Findhorn Elves and a Generous Ent. Ent's not bad. Elves doesn't do too much. So they play both of those, and they do attack with their Avenging Hunter. I could block with like a bunch of Inspectors or something like that, but I'd rather lose fewer creatures because the Guardian's Pledge is better the more creatures we have. So I'm happy to trade this 1 Skyfisher for an Avenging Hunter, and then also an extra damage from this Thraben Inspector. So trading a 1-for-1 there, keeping our initiative, and not having to spend Prismatic Strands is really good. We trap them, put them down to a lowly 26 life, and we get a Suture Priest, which... if they keep drawing, if they do get more creatures, could definitely be nice. And we decide to go for the attack with everything. We have Prismatic Strands for a couple turns, and we have this Guardian's Pledge. And I figure, worst case scenario, they eat 2 of our creatures with Generous Ents, but we also eat a bunch of their creatures because they have to block or die. And so they block with a bunch of their creatures. We're able to go for the Pledge and deal them. They only go down to 2, so they're still alive, but they lose 4 of their creatures. So even if they draw anything that's gives them a buff for the number of elves, they've lost a bunch, and they concede on their turn. But the fact that even if they did have like an Expert Hydra or something, we would be able to keep the initiative because of the prismatic strands was really, really good. Sideboard, exactly the same. We get those holy lights, we get those standard bearers, get rid of novice inspectors, get rid of judges familiars. This hand is not very good. We have 5 lands, unless this Eagles turns into an Eagles. Lunarch Veteran and Standard Bearer. Really not a good one, but Standard Bearer is interaction, and we do need some form of interaction. Our curve's not bad, and we're going to need to draw something anyway. So we decide to keep this one, but it's definitely risky. They play a Llanowar Elves. We get another Standard Bearer. Not great. We really don't need more than one usually. They play Aquarian Ranger and then do some shenanigans to get their Priest out. We just play our Standard Bearer and attack with their Lunarch Veteran. I'm happy to trade for any of their creatures, but they decline. They play out another Ranger and they go for Lead the Stampede. They only find an Elvish Mystic and a Priest of Titania, but they're gaining a lot of mana very quickly, and they have a Spider Silk Armor, so again, going to be problematic if we get a Holy Light. We get to play a Rafine's Informant, bin the Lunarch Veteran. The life isn't super important, and I'd rather be able to get more creatures out quicker. We play a Novice Inspector. They play their Elvish Mystic into their Priest of Titania, tap their Priest for another Lead the Stampede. So they turn up 5 creatures this time, including another Priest of Titania and a Llanowar Elves, more Elves, and a Nyxborn Hydra. So they're going to be able to have a massive Nyxborn next turn, but luckily it can't go on a creature because of the Standard Bearer, but it could just be problematic either way. We get a Battle Screech, so we're going to be able to cast that and flash it back. Maybe we can get a Guardian's Pledge and squeak out a victory here, but everything has reach, so it's going to be a little bit harder for sure. We're going to pass back to them, gaining a little bit of life off the Veteran. They're going to lead the Stampede yet again. They get a Timberwatch and a Generous Ant, so only 2 creatures off that. They start playing Elvish Mystics. Every Elvish Mystic here is a Dark Ritual because they have 3 Priests of Titania, so they pay 1 mana, get an Elf, and all of these tap for 3 more. So they play out an Elvish Mystic and a Finhorn Elves. Boom, boom, up 6 green mana for the turn. Tap for a cool 30 between the Priests, and a couple more for the Llanowar Elves, and they are going to be casting an enormous Nyxborn Hydra, I would expect. They stop at 6 mana so that they can also cast a Generous Ent, diversify a little bit, but a 24, 25, or 26, Nyxborn Hydra is definitely going to be problematic. We cycle an Eagles of the North for an Idyllic Grange, put it onto our bird. We do have a Prismatic Strand, so we're not dead yet, but we do need to find a Thraben Charm stat. Pass to them, they swing for 24. Technically, I could take it, but then all of their 1-power creatures are going to be very lethal, or pretty close to lethal, so we do go for the Prismatic Strands here. And there's no reason to block. There's no way we have 26 damage on board, otherwise we would have tried to kill the Hydra. And to my despair, they start tapping for 30 again, and doing that weird one mana at a time thing you gotta do when you're casting an X spell, so I'm expecting another Giant Hydra. And the prophecy comes true. We do get a Thraben Charm, which is good, but we now have 2 giant creatures we have to deal with, so we need to dig for a second one. Play Rafine's Informant, ditch a Standard Bearer. We're looking for it. We do have 1 more Prismatic Strands to keep us alive for a turn. We need 2 Thraben Charms to be able to blow up their creatures. They Winding Way and turn up a bunch more creatures. They got some Timberwatch Elves as well that'll be coming down. Prismatic Strands prevent all the damage. We certainly don't have 26 or 34 damage to kill one of these. Play their Timberwatches, Findhorn, and Llanowar, just about everything out. And we play a Core Skyfisher, but realize that there's really nothing we can do. We could blow this up. They attack with this. We could take it, and it wouldn't be lethal. And if we draw Prismatic Strands, maybe we have a chance, seeing as these Timberwatches can't target anything but the Standard Bearer. This one, maybe we did concede just a little early. It was very unlikely we were going to win. But if we make a couple chumps, top deck a Prismatic Strands, into a Thraben Charm, to blow up this, into a Holy Light to wipe the board, into a Guardian's Pledge to attack them for lethal, you know, if we drew those exact 5 cards in that order, I think we had a shot. But this one I think might have been okay to concede here. So this hand is very similar to the last one. I don't think it's a bad one to keep. We do want a Standard Bearer every single game. It's even though they can still get through it with a Masked Vandal. First of all, they have to draw one of those, but even if they do, they have to consolidate everything on one of those Masked Vandals. They can't spread it out, and they also can't use like Aquarian Rangers and things like that. So I think you want a Standard Bearer every single game. But we were just burned by a hand like this. We do have the extra core Skyfisher, so it's a little bit better. We can be a little bit more aggressive. But 4 lands is just, we never want to see 4 lands in our opener. 3 is usually the ideal number, so we decide to ship it back. And we get this hand that is quite a bit better, I think. So I could get rid of the Guardian's Pledge, and often I would, but because we have the Battle Screech, I think our game plan is play a Battle Screech and Guardian's Pledge it, try to win on like turn 5 or 6 if we're able. And this core Skyfisher is honestly not very good with what we have in hand. No Inspector to pick up means we're going to have to set back a land, which we really don't want to do. So we're going to bottom the Skyfisher, play a Plains, cycle this Eagles for a Plains on the end step. They have an Elvish Mystic, so decent start for them. We play our Plains and get down our Standard Bearer. It's all we can play here. They play a Priest of Titania and a Quirion Ranger. I really hope we draw Plains here, because then we can just Holy Light, take out their first 3 creatures. Absolutely would be worth it. An Idyllic Grange comes in tapped. We draw a Standard Bearer, so we play the Grange, play another Standard Bearer, and we just pass to them and hope that they're not able to buff up their team with like a Spider Silk Armor. Would be absolutely devastating. They play another Quirion Ranger, and then they tap 6, and they play a Generous Ent, which is good early. They attack with their Quirion Ranger too, which we're happy to take one. But we're going to Holy Light, wipe their 4 creatures. They do have a Generous Ent that we need to deal with, or, you know, it's going to kill us at some point. But we have tons of Chumpers in this deck. They crack their food as their only thing to do for 2 mana, so I know that they have probably Nyxborn Hydras, Turn Timber Elves, 3 mana and above cards, which is absolutely great for us. And not more Generous Ents, or obviously they probably would have played a 3rd Forest. So we get a Lunarch Veteran and a Suture Priest, so this is actually going to be able to keep us gaining a little bit of life so we don't die to this Generous Ent too quickly. Meanwhile, we're gaining creatures that this Guardian's Pledge is going to be good for. They Winding Way for creatures, and they hit a Timberwatch Elf, which they can't play, and a Quirion Ranger, which currently doesn't do anything. So I absolutely love to see that. We get an Inspector, which is okay. We draw 2, it could be a good chump blocker, and we get to draw a card. So we're going to do that, see if we get a Plains. We don't, but we get to attack in for 4 here. Put them down to 17. They cycle a Generous Ent that they found, play an Elvish Mystic, and play a Quirion Ranger. They do take 2 damage off of that, which is not irrelevant. They're at 15, so 5 creatures attacking with a Guardian's Pledge would be lethal, which is pretty good for us if we go for it right here. If we didn't draw Plains, I probably would attack with the team. If they don't block, we win, but if they block, we kill some of their creatures and we hit them for a bunch. But we draw the land. There's no reason, I don't think, to go for that risky play, where we could potentially die on the crackback because they have a Generous Ent for 5 damage to us, and maybe they have like an Nyxborn Hydra for +2. So instead, we're going to Battle Screech, gain 2 life per creature, so we're going to gain 8 life total, and we're almost definitively going to have the win next turn with our Guardian's Pledge. So I think that's the better way to do it. And yeah, I attack with just the Thraben Inspector here, happy to trade it for one of their guys, but otherwise want to leave back a bunch of chump blockers. They tap a bunch here, even Quirion Rangering our Standard Bearer to bounce their Forest, and play a Nyxborn Hydra as a 4/5. But we Suture Priest them for 1, and they only have 3 creatures here. We're able to swing with the whole lot. We have a total of 9 creatures getting in with Guardian's Pledge. They only have 3 blockers. That's going to be at least 18 damage to them. And we're able to get the clean 5-0. Oh my gosh, some of those Elves games were crazy long. Elves games are always long with this kind of a deck because you're very stally, but we were able to beat them 3 times. It's previously been the match that I've had the hardest trouble with. I think between the Prismatic Strands, Thraben Charms, Standard Bearers, and Holy Lights in both the main and sideboard, I think we have a good shot at beating them each time. Obviously, we lost a few games to them. That's going to happen, but taking 3 matches against them felt really good. I will say, not a great league for the Judges Familiar, as I don't think they do very well against Mono Red or against Elves, so they didn't really get to shine here. But the Suture Priest did a ton of work against Elves. That one game where they went down to 1 and then died off of their own initiative was a super cool way to see Suture Priest. And they did have to bolt it in the Mono Red deck just so that they wouldn't take like 6 damage off of it. Not to mention, obviously, we're gaining life with it all the while. Overall, loved the Suture Priest. Need to try out the Judges Familiar more. I didn't miss the Martyr's Souls in this league because I don't think Martyr's Soul is also particularly good against Mono Red or against Elves, but I do like Martyr's Soul against any sort of terror deck or anything like that. Overall, I've been loving all of the innovation with White Weenies recently, and I'm definitely going to keep trying it out. This deck is just a lot of fun, and honestly, I just think really good. Still a little bit undervalued, even though it's, you know, topped some challenges and things like that in the last couple months. So definitely give it a try, and if there are any weirdo cards that you think could be sweet in this deck, go ahead and suggest them. I mean, we have about 5 flex slots that I'm willing to put just about any card except for a Militia Bugler in. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.